What happens when a sitting U.S. president wants to build a $400 million ballroom at the White House, but the courts say he can't? Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into one of the most controversial construction projects in American history, President Donald Trump's massive White House ballroom, and the explosive legal battle that could reshape the balance of power between the executive branch and Congress. This isn't just about a fancy party venue. This is about presidential authority, historic preservation, national security, and who really gets to decide what happens on America's most famous address, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why a three-judge appeals court panel just gave Trump the green light to continue construction for now, and why this fight is far from over. Let's start with the basics. In late 2025, President Donald Trump made a bold move. He ordered the demolition of the White House East Wing. Yes, you heard that right. The historic East Wing, a structure that stood for decades and hosted countless presidential events, was torn down. Why? To make room for a brand new 90,000 square foot ballroom. This isn't a small addition. We're talking about a $400 million, privately funded megaproject designed to host state dinners, diplomatic receptions, and large-scale presidential events. The White House's current event spaces simply can't accommodate modern demand, and the Trump administration argues this ballroom is essential for national security and diplomatic logistics. But here's the twist. Trump didn't wait for Congress to approve the project. He didn't get clearance from key federal agencies like the National Park Service or the Commission of Fine Arts. He just started building, and that's where the legal storm began. Enter the National Trust for Historic Preservation. This isn't some random interest group. The National Trust is one of the most respected historic preservation organizations in the United States, and they saw what Trump did as nothing short of presidential overreach. In December 2025, they filed a federal lawsuit against Trump and several federal agencies. Their argument? Simple but powerful. The president does not have the authority to demolish a historic part of the White House and build a massive new structure without congressional approval and proper federal oversight. Here's what happened next. December 2025. National Trust files lawsuit early 2026. U.S. District Judge Richard Leon hears the case March 2026. Judge Leon rules in favor of the National Trust. Trump cannot build the ballroom without Congress March.
President Trump says he plans to move forward building the new White House ballroom despite a federal judge blocking its construction. The judge sided with historical preservationists who claim that the $400 million project violated federal law. In the decision, he wrote, quote, "No statute comes close to giving the president the authority he claims to have." The president's Justice Department has already filed an appeal.
Part of his opinion, but basically he's saying I need congressional approval. And he's so wrong. This is being financed privately. It's a donation that's being given by companies, very rich people. The ballroom is a donation. It's gotten great reviews. People love it. And presidents for 150 years have wanted this ballroom to be.
April 2026. White House appeals the decision April 11th, 2026. Appeals court orders lower court to reconsider national security implications April 17th to 18th, 2026. Three-judge appeals court panel grants administrative stay. Construction can continue for now. This back and forth has created a legal roller coaster that's kept Washington on edge for months. Let's break down Judge Richard Leon's original ruling, because it's the core of this entire legal battle. U.S. District Judge Richard Leon is no stranger to high-profile cases. He served on the federal bench since 2001 and has ruled on everything from government surveillance to presidential powers. In his March 2026 decision, Leon made three key findings. 1. Congressional authorization is required. Leon ruled that the White House is federal property, and any major construction, especially demolishing a historic wing, requires explicit authorization from Congress. Trump bypassed this step entirely. 2. Historic preservation laws were violated. The East Wing is protected under historic preservation statutes. By demolishing it without proper review from the National Park Service and other agencies, The administration violated federal law. 3. The president can't unilaterally redesign the White House. Leon's ruling sent a clear message. Even the president doesn't have unlimited power over national landmarks. The Constitution separates powers for a reason, Leon wrote. The executive branch cannot simply rewrite the rules when it comes to historic federal property. This ruling shocked many in Washington. For the first time in decades, a federal judge was putting a hard brake on a sitting president's construction project at the White House itself. So the White House appealed. And here's where things get really interesting. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, one of the most powerful courts in the country, didn't just focus on historic preservation. They introduced a new dimension into the case: national security. On April 11, 2026, a three-judge appeals panel issued a surprising order. Judge Leon must reconsider the national security implications of halting construction. Why? Because the ballroom project isn't just about parties. The administration argues it includes critical underground security facilities, including a bunker, that are essential for protecting the president, his family, and White House staff. The appeals court said they didn't have enough information to decide how much of the project could be stopped without jeopardizing safety. This was a strategic move. By raising national security, the White House shifted the debate from historic preservation to protecting the commander-in-chief. And that's a much harder argument for courts to dismiss. Fast forward to April 17th to 18th, 2026. In an overnight procedural ruling, the same three-judge appeals panel granted an administrative stay of Judge Leon's injunction. What does that mean? Construction crews are expected to pick up where they left off immediately. The below-ground work on security facilities and the bunker has been ongoing throughout, but now the above-ground structure can rise again. But here's the catch: this is temporary. The court explicitly said this is not a final decision. They're buying time to study the case more deeply. The real legal showdown will happen at the June 5th hearing. You might be wondering, why should we care about a ballroom? This case is about way more than nice chandeliers and marble floors. It's about three fundamental questions that could shape American governance for decades. 1. Presidential power. Where's the line? Can a president unilaterally transform the White House without Congress? If Trump succeeds, what stops future presidents from doing similar projects? Or worse, bypassing Congress on other major decisions? 2. Historic preservation versus modern needs. The White House is over 200 years old. Should we preserve every inch of it? Or should we adapt it for 21st century demands like security, diplomacy, and technology? 3. National security as a legal shield. The White House is using national security to justify continuing construction. Is this a legitimate concern or a legal loophole to bypass congressional oversight? Legal experts are divided. Some say Trump's team is on shaky ground. Others argue that in an era of rising geopolitical threats, the president needs upgraded security infrastructure, and Congress moves too slowly to provide it. This case could set a precedent for how future presidents interact with federal property, historic sites, and congressional authority. If Trump wins, he gets his ballroom, sets a precedent for executive flexibility, and possibly expands presidential power over federal property. If the National Trust wins, construction stops, Congress must approve any future projects, and historic preservation laws are reinforced. The real winner might be the American public, if this case forces a much-needed national conversation about how we govern our most important landmarks. So where do we go from here? June 5th, 2026 is the next major milestone. The appeals court will hear formal arguments on whether construction should be stopped during the appeal. Here's what to watch for. 1. National security evidence. Will the White House present classified or detailed evidence about the bunker and security facilities? If so, how much will be made public? 2. Congressional testimony. Will members of Congress testify? Have they been contacted for official input? This could turn into a legislative battlefield. 3. Supreme Court possibility. If the appeals court rules against Trump, expect the White House to appeal to the Supreme Court. This case has all the hallmarks of a landmark constitutional decision. 4. Public opinion polling is split. Some Americans see this as necessary modernization. Others see it as presidential arrogance. The public reaction could influence the justices. One thing's certain, this isn't over. Not even close. You run a global news channel, so let's zoom out. Why does a White House ballroom matter to people outside the U.S.? Because the United States sets global precedents. If a U.S. president can unilaterally rebuild the White House without Congress, what does that say about checks and balances? If national security can override historic preservation and congressional authority, how will other democracies respond? Allies and adversaries alike are watching how America handles internal power struggles. A divided or chaotic U.S. weakens its global leadership. Countries like the UK, France, and Canada are also grappling with how to modernize historic government buildings while respecting heritage. The U.S. decision could influence their policies too. And let's not forget, Trump's presidency itself is a global phenomenon. Every major move, from trade wars to court battles, sends shockwaves through international diplomacy. So why should you care? Because this case is about who holds power in America, and that affects everyone, everywhere. If you believe in strong presidential leadership, you might support the ballroom as necessary for modern security and diplomacy. If you believe in checks and balances, you might side with the national trust in Congress. If you care about history, the loss of the East Wing is a blow to America's architectural heritage. If you worry about democratic norms, this case tests whether the rule of law applies equally, even to the president. Your voice matters. Public opinion can influence judges, lawmakers, and even the Supreme Court. That's why staying informed, like you are right now by watching this video, is so important. We're witnessing history in the making. A president is trying to reshape the most iconic building in America. A preservation group is fighting to protect history. Judges are scrabbling to balance security, law, and tradition. And all of it is unfolding in real time, with construction crews working day and day on the White House grounds. The appeals court just gave Trump a temporary win. Construction will continue until June. But the real battle, the one that could redefine presidential power, is just getting started. Will Congress step in? Will the Supreme Court hear this case? And what kind of precedent will be set for future presidents? These are the questions that will define this story for years to come. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on this developing story. Drop a comment below. Do you think Trump should be allowed to build the ballroom without Congress? Let's start a conversation. And if you want more in-depth analysis on global politics, geopolitics, and current affairs, make sure you're subscribed. Because here, we don't just report the news, we explain what it really means. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.